Hello world, this is Lisa Friedrichsen, your friend and computer science professor at Johnson County Community College. In this short screencast, we're going to continue our lessons on javascript.info, and we're actually going to write some JavaScript code. We are in JavaScript Fundamentals in 2.1 Hello World, where we're going to have JavaScript create Hello World on the screen, which is a traditional way to start learning any new programming language. So if I go into that section, I get a great explanation of how to create Hello World using JavaScript. And as we know from our previous lessons, we need both a place to write our code as well as a compiler to read and run and execute our code. Fortunately for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we can write all of our code in a mere code editor, and we can compile it and run it in any modern browser. JavaScript.info also provides these little simulated windows where we can run our code simply by clicking this little run button, and we see our hello world that's created. And we can also modify it in Plunker if I click the Open in Sandbox button and then run it and see the results of it on the right. But because we're going to want to save and work on our code, what I want to encourage you to do is to copy that code. I'm going to select all of it, press Control-C, and then go over to my local code editor, which I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, and paste it into a new file here and save it to my desktop, so that I have the file local and I can work with it and play with it and study it and save it on my computer versus just using these simulations that are online. When I first opened Visual Studio Code, there's a lot going on, and I've already closed some of the panes. You'll want to go ahead and click these icons just so you know what they're for. The top one gives us our file listing, and right now the only thing that we have open is this welcome file. There's a search feature, there's a work with Git and GitHub, there's a feature to debug our code, and there's a feature to add in extensions. We're not going to really need any of these in the beginning at least. We're going to go back to the File tab, close this welcome screen, which is very interesting, but we don't need it right now, and do a mere File, New File, and Control-V, paste the code into the window. Now because this file is untitled, there's no color coding yet. I've just got the black window and the white text. Watch what happens as soon as I click File, Save As, and I've already created a folder on my desktop for javascript.info. I'm going to call this file 2.1.html because it's from lesson 2.1 and save it. And as soon as I give that file an extension, then the color coding starts appearing, which is very helpful to a developer to see the difference between the HTML, JavaScript, and the mere text that's going to show up on the web page. Now, if you're in my class, you're going to want to build correctly formed HTML files. And you know that every HTML file should have a head section and a body section, but this one doesn't. In the little code snippet from javascript.info, there's no head section, there's no head tags in this code. We're going to go ahead and put them in there. And I want you to know that in Visual Studio Code, all I have to do is type head and press enter, and I get the opening and closing angle brackets and the closing tag. That is enormously helpful, makes me more productive as a programmer. In the head section, we know we're going to need the title tags. I don't need to type that opening angle bracket. I can merely press title, and I get the title tag, and I'm going to type hi as the title for my web page, because this web page is going to use JavaScript to alert the user to hi world. And I also need the meta tag. As soon as I type in meta and hit enter, look at that. Visual Studio Code knows that meta is a closed or empty tag, not a paired tag, and it didn't put in the ending tag. It just put the nice angle brackets around the meta element. And as soon as I start typing ch, the meta element knows that the character set attribute exists, and so I can simply click it, and look at there, I got an equal sign and quotation marks. So you can quickly see how much more productive it is to do your development in a code editor such as Visual Studio Code, as opposed to typing all those characters in Notepad++. Now, if you're first learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, there is value to typing every single character so you understand the syntax. But yes, after about 100 files, you've got the syntax down, and it's really nice to use a code editor to type in the angle brackets, the equal sign, and the quotation marks around your attribute values. I'm also going to go up into the head section and add the lang attribute and set that equal to EN for English. And I'm also going to go up into the top part of the document and let's do a comment with our name and the current date as I request on all documents that you provide for me. With the particulars of Visual Studio Code and the head section out of the way, let's look at the body section where we have two paragraphs before the script and after the script and then the script. This is how we insert JavaScript into a web page. Now we can also put JavaScript in an external file, but for now we're sticking our JavaScript directly into the web page inside this opening and closing script tag. The alert method is a very interesting method in that it simply alerts this text out into a dialog box. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this file is saved. I can tell it's not by the little circle there. If I press Control S or save, then I see the X, which means that has been saved. But anytime you see the circle there or the circle up in the title bar, that means that the file still needs to be saved. In order to open this up into a browser, I need to start a browser window, press Control O, and then search for that page in its location on your computer, just like you would any other file. And I'm going to open 2.1.html directly into Chrome here. And there we go, hello world, and I've got 2 exclamation points. I'm going to click OK. That's what the JavaScript is doing. It's providing that alert message. So that's neat. Let me put in a whole bunch of exclamation points, save, and refresh my page again, just to prove that this is working. So developers oftentimes like to actually have 2 windows, their browser window right beside their code window, and I don't need so much room here on the left, so I'll resize that so I can have my code next to my browser. But if you have the luxury of having 2 screens, you can see how helpful it is to have your code on the left, save it, and then to refresh on the right. I'm going to say something a little bit different here. Hello web 114, and save and refresh. And now we know that this code is working. This is how you'll handle all your homework for me. You'll pick a code editor and do your work locally, not in an online simulator where it may be difficult to save all your code or where they may have taken shortcuts and not put in the requirements such as the comment, the language, the head section that are required for a correctly formed and validated HTML file. At this point, while we're still learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I don't want us to take shortcuts. I want us to learn how to do it right. Sometimes I think these online tools, when they do take shortcuts, can be a little bit confusing. When you get in your browser, I want you to right-click and inspect and open up that developer tools. I want you to have the console page open all the time. Because if you make a mistake, for example, text must be delimited in JavaScript. If you forget to close the string with an apostrophe, that's going to create an error. I'm going to save, I'm going to refresh, and I want you to see this console is going to identify, hey, there's an invalid or unexpected token. That's just a character on line 14. And here's line 14, and you're looking at this and you're saying, oh, I see the color coding has gone a little wonky here. It should be closed with a white parenthesis, and your eyes will then see that, oh, I forgot the closing apostrophe, which then makes the colors work better. And if I Control S, save, I've got my file saved, and I refresh, then I get what I'm expecting and no error message down here. As you're writing your JavaScript on the left and you're refreshing it on the right in your browser to test your code, leave your console open. It will be an enormous tool for you to find and fix errors. Another thing I want to tell you right off the bat is that there's a command called console that's speaking to the console object with its log method. And we'll talk a lot more about objects and methods as we go through the class, but console.log is one of those methods that is indispensable because you can log out anything to the console that you want. Right now, I'm just going to log out my name, but I'm going to save that file and refresh it, And not only do I get the hello web 114 at the top, look, I'm console logging out my name into the console. Now, logging out mere string of text isn't all that valuable. But when we are working with variables, which we'll do very soon, to understand and know the value of that variable while it's being processed in the script is invaluable. JavaScript is the default scripting language. So there used to be an opening attribute here for the script element that identified the type of the script. We do not need that anymore. So modern JavaScript simply uses the script open and the script close tag and puts the JavaScript inside them for embedded JavaScript. As we get better though, we're going to want to take our JavaScript out of the HTML file and stick it in an external file so that we can reuse our JavaScript against many different HTML pages, just like we reuse style sheets across many different web pages. The concept is exactly the same. Select these two statements. I'm going to cut them, and I'm going to refer to them with the src property. We'll just call this test.js. So JavaScript files are going to have a JS extension. I'm going to save that. I'm going to do a file, new file, paste this in, and file, save as, into my same folder. I'm going to call this test.js. So now I've got my JavaScript separated in an external file from my HTML. I'm going to save both of them, file, save all, refresh my page, hello web 114, click OK, and Lisa's logged down to the console. So I know the HTML file is still connected to my test file. Now, one final thing about alert and console.log. Alert is actually a method of the window object. The window object is the default object in the JavaScript engine environment. So you very rarely see people type window.alert. They'll just shorten it to alert because this piece is actually optional. But I like to put it in there in the beginning because I think it makes it more obvious that this is a method being applied to the window object with this argument. And now we're starting to get into programming language terminology, and we're going to unpack all of that in due time. However, these two types of statements are our go-to statements to make sure our JavaScript is connected to our HTML file. Now, the book, javascript.info, is very, very fond of alerts. And the reason it's fond of alerts is because they show up as pop-up windows on the screen. Let's say hello world, just to make sure this is still all connected. Control S for save, refresh. Yes, hello world. The javascript.info website is extremely common of alerts. And I think the reason for that is they're easy, they're obvious, and they don't require the user to open up the console in order to see them, which is great. But because the console has so many benefits to you as the developer in that it shows you error messages, you can log out values of different things, and you can even test JavaScript statements here. I am fond of the console. It simply requires you to open it up. So there will be many times in my instructions where the javascript.info site will have you do an alert, and I'll have you change that to console.log. Because after all, once you have 5 alerts going on a web page, they get annoying. Window.alert can be shortened to merely alert, and it is shortened to merely alert in most books and also at the javascript.info website. But I am more fond of console.log for the developer benefits. One other thing that the Hello World lesson teaches you, which is very important, is how to do JavaScript comments. JavaScript comments are entered with // and this is what I'll want you to do at the top of all files is go ahead and document them with your name and the current date. If you want to make a multi-line comment, you need to use the CSS comment syntax. And sometimes folks like to do it like this, /**/. If you want to make a comment at the end of a statement, you can use // where is the object? And that's a very handy way to leave a message for your instructor in your homework. So use comments as liberally as you want for both documentation as well as communication with me and reminders to yourself to come back to something to work on it again. And the third way is if you have a statement that doesn't work, and I've intentionally put the string, started it with a single apostrophe and ended it with a quotation mark. If you have trouble debugging a statement of code, use a comment to comment it out, and then try something else. And by commenting out statements that don't work and then trying something else, you leave the record of what you've tried, which means you'll probably spin your wheels retrying the same mistakes over and over again less. You'll see the previous things you've tried and leave that trail there so that you'll get to the right answer faster. Okay, this is an important lesson because this is the first time you're writing JavaScript and you're writing it in the environment of a web page where you develop the web page in a code editor and you display the results in a modern browser. Thank you.